when I've seen you call out the tradcons, usually you'll call out like I love the interview that you did with Michael Knowles. We talked about marriage and it not being a good deal for men. And in my last episode about the dowry, I actually used a clip of that where he basically said that if you get a prenup, it invalidates the sacrament and all that other stuff. But not only do we talk about how the tradcons view marriage and they're not really doing enough as we would all like to see them kind of reform the laws and the family courts and remove the liabilities when it comes to marriage, but also just how they view masculinity, how being a man is all about protect, provide, sacrifice, serve, don't complain. And so the way that masculinity is being defined, I think, is a big problem. And one of the questions that I want to ask at some point coming up is, do you think men are smart enough to realize that masculinity is the first thing that anyone will attack when they want to control men?
I just did it. That's a really good question.
It's complicated.
Yeah. What do you think the answer is? Do you think men, because when I hear that question, my mind goes two ways. One way is I've seen men take some really, really bad deals in my lifetime. But I think social media also has opened the floodgates where women used to be a lot more deceptive and they can't be. I see like on TikTok and stuff, women getting like ratioed when they tell like a abuse story, or you know what I mean? Like, and that just never used to happen like 10 years ago. So, or men, realizing that they're the bailout guy, where I don't, like 10 years ago, they just kind of fell for it because we didn't have all this media. That's my initial thought, but I don't have an answer. So I'm curious what you think.
Well, okay, if I had to answer my own question, I would say that, so masculinity is almost like this pre-scripted idea, this identity that men have to follow, where I guess you man up and get married, or if you don't do A, B, and C, you're not a real man. So masculinity is also the first thing that's promoted when they want to control men. And I think that you see tradcons doing this. You even see some red pillars doing this. They will say things like, oh, you've got really feminine energy right now, or you're a beta male, or you're a simp, or you're a weak man, or you're gay. First thing, and I think that the strongest men are the ones who don't fall prey to that. Even following up in that logic train, I was going to say, do you think it's true that our society is more willing to accept gay men than it will accept straight men who don't meet masculinity standards?
Oh my gosh, that's I think you're right. Like they're more willing to accept gay men than,
So then why do we see gay men as more oppressed than straight men when straight men can't even be themselves without following this masculine script?
Have you done a video with that one yet?
That's coming up.
Okay, that was like that is a great line of questioning. Wow.
Thank you.
No, because you're totally right. Like people will shame. I mean, I even use the simp one. I can't help it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that it's all about, that's just, you see it everywhere on social media. Women do it. Tradcons do it. Some red pillars do it. It's like, this is what a real man is supposed to be. And I'm saying, well, why? Another line of questioning that I've used in a past episode was when we talk about what empowers men and what empowers women. Why is female empowerment all about liberation and choice, while men's empowerment is all about masculinity, duty, and sacrifice, which is actually the opposite of liberation and choice? How can what empowers one gender be the opposite of what empowers the other? So for women, it's more freedom, and for men, it's more duty and responsibility. And so what's going on here,
So what is your goal with your content? Do you have like an end goal that you're hoping to achieve, or I'm just kind of curious what like in 5 years you're hoping to get?
I think that we need to have more honest conversations about what masculinity truly means, what it means to be a man, what the expectations are of women, what the expectations are of society. I think that what's happening right now is Are we going to accept a world of double standards, or are we going to try to, level the playing field and actually have equality? Now, what's happening is a lot of times people say, well, men and women can't be equal because we're not the same. But I don't think that's necessarily true, because nobody in our society is truly the same, but we should, different races aren't the same, but we should all have equal rights under the law. Mm-hmm. We have equal justice. So I think that, just to say that men and women, should there be double standards just because we're not the same? I mean, I understand that, we have different strengths and we have different weaknesses, but I think that, to have these very strict roles is a very kind of a strange idea in a society where the laws aren't the same, the technology is different, it's a completely different culture. And, I think that another question I wanted to ask you, actually, I'll throw it back at you. If you had to choose, what would you rather see? Would you rather see women go back to the way they were before feminism, or would you rather see men liberated from their masculine role?
I would rather, I think the only solution to feminism is more feminism. So
Explain.
So I only think, like, when women start getting the same sentences as men, that they might stop, like, hitting them, for example, right? When they actually start being put in jail. Or, women with the right to vote, when they start actually having consequences for what we vote for instead of being bailed out. That's more what I would like to see. I'd like to see more fair laws where we're actually equal under the law.
Okay, well, for example, when we talk about false accusations, right? I've heard a lot of people, suggest the idea that there should be an equal punishment for a false accusation as if, you were convicted of that accusation. But obviously, yeah, we need to have more accountability or, equal accountability, I guess, for these things, because, if women don't have skin in the game, there's no incentive.
Correct, yeah.
So I think that it comes down to the fact that I think, I don't know if it's necessarily, it's going to be a combination of asking more of women and maybe slightly less of men.
Well, and also women are having I'm one of 10 kids. We're having 1.5. I don't know if that's enough to be a housewife.
Well,
one kid, you could go be a teacher or something.
Well, I mean, is it? I read a comment this morning where someone said, "Is it surprising for women to expect women to want to have children when women are now expected to be in the workforce and providing even for themselves?"
Well, yeah, but the average is 1.5.
Yeah.
So to me, men still want to have kids even though they have to work.
Right. It's true. Right.
Yeah. So I just don't think women want to be mothers as much as we originally thought. Because if we wanted to, we would have.
So how do you respond then when people say that, women naturally want to be that way? Like, in other words, if it was natural, why did it change?
I don't think it was. And the reason, what made me come to this conclusion? So it was, I couldn't believe how mad women got over abortion. When it was that was the most visceral when I would debate women, where they would just get so angry. And I'm like, why are you so angry over just a difference in opinion? And I used to fight really hard because my parents adopted kids. And so pro-life was just something I kind of grew up with. But then I just realized that the infant mortality rate is very similar to the abortion rate today.
Wow.
So that leads, I don't have proof or evidence of this, but just anecdotally arguing with women and seeing how much they just fight to what I would view as abort their children, kill their children. I think it's always been like this. I think it's now that social media is here, we have we can see what women actually are.
Do
you also disagree or agree?
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, I can see that, but I also think that as far as women wanting to be able to, it just comes down to the fact that women want to be able to have the choice to do that. I mean, obviously, I think that, I used to always kind of wonder about this. It's okay, well, the women who are having abortions, do we really want those women reproducing anyway and stuff? Because they're probably just going to raise more, male feminist children and stuff, I guess, so.
I mean, I just think it's useless to fight over it. They'll die. I think the pro-life movement, they got Roe versus Wade, but if you think a plan B is an abortion, which they do, I mean, those are through the roof.
Yeah.
So I just don't see it going anywhere in my lifetime. But it would be interesting to like, I think men, like we've talked about this, but our men should be able to opt out of child support if women can opt out of motherhood.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, and that's what I mean. The
financial abortion.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. I think the solution to feminism is more feminism. Like we asked to be free. Here you go.
Well, one of the things that I was looking into is the idea of back in the 70s, and I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Warren Farrell, for example, right? He was kind of like the father.
Oh yeah, I met him. Yeah,
the father of this men's liberation movement, where basically, in the 70s they were trying to, liberate women, but then they were also trying to liberate men. There's actually a famous black and white photo on the internet of a protest where it said, let's share custody, and they wanted mandatory 50-50 physical custody, and they also wanted men to be viewed as more than just success objects. Meanwhile, today, we're promoting the very opposite of that. We're saying that men should be success objects. And so I think that maybe revisiting that idea of maybe gender roles can be more fluid or more of a choice as opposed to more of an expectation.
So what would that look like to you? So like, relationship beginning to end, how would it go?
Well, I mean, I think that, there are plenty of things that women are capable of that they're not doing just because they believe that that's a man's job.
Okay.
Like anything women don't want to do is automatically labeled masculinity, right?
That's such a good point.
I mean, women are perfectly capable of approaching men for business, but they won't approach men for relationships.
No, that's so true.
And it's crazy because if women approach men, they're far more likely to have success than if men approach women. Plus, women don't like being approached by the men that they don't like. So kind of.
So you'd like to see women approach men?
Oh, absolutely. I think that would definitely. But a lot of people will say, oh, but that the man is supposed to lead, and it's like, well, the women control the dating market, but the men are somehow the leaders, and it's kind of a weird.
They kind of did that in Bumble. Like now that everything's digital, do you think that works? Or
of course not, because when a woman messages you on Bumble, what's her message? Hey.
I don't
That's
know.
all they say. They say hey and nothing else. And then they still expect the man to kind of take over. In fact, I even asked a question about this similar. I said, okay, if men are expected to protect women because they're physically stronger, why can't women pay all the bills? Why are both duties assigned to the man? So there are plenty of, because we still have this idea, his money is our money and, her money is her money. And I'm saying, okay, well then what are women working for? You know what I mean? So there's plenty of things that women are capable of. And it's like, okay, well then step up and prove it. But we're always expecting the men to step up to delusional standards. Men have we're asking more of men than has ever been asked in history.
And the other thing too is women's money is way easier to get. It is far easier to make money as a woman because like at 22, you could go be like a pharmacist. Like there are girls from my school that went and made 6 figures right out of college as a pharmaceutical sales rep. How long would that take a guy to do?
Well, women are getting, they have female-only scholarships.
Yeah.
Women are getting, obviously there was all the DEI stuff. I don't know how that's changing now with the new administration. You also have the, women they always have a bailout. They could do OnlyFans if they want to. Women, female bartenders, female hostesses, cocktail waitresses in Vegas. I mean, they make a lot of money just because they can use their looks to open a lot of doors.
Is that a thing here? I've heard that there's like in Vegas, really hot, like broke guys that they just live off of these bottle girls. Is that a thing?
I don't know. It's possible. I mean, I'm sure that.
But you do interviews all the time. You never run into anything like that.
Not so much, but that would be a good question. Like maybe just kind of find out. Like, yeah, do you got some, some Chad living with you who? I mean, look, I've heard some women saying, I've taken care of men before, but. I mean, are women going to take those men seriously for a relationship, or are they just looking for an F-boy? You know what I mean? So
yeah, there was a guy I knew in London, and that was his play. Is he went and got really jacked, and he would just hit on like 32-year-old lawyers and live for free.
Yeah,
in London.
Well, that's the thing. Also, it's kind of like
he kind of reversed the system where he's like, I'm just going to go to the gym. It's easier than getting a job.
Yeah,
Go ahead, go ahead.
well, it's funny too because it was kind of like I remember when I was at the AVN Awards and I was interviewing the sex workers. I asked a question about if a unwanted pregnancy happened during the shooting of a professional scene, because obviously sex work is filmed without condoms. Then is there anything that the man can do to avoid being held responsible for child support? And this woman said to me, well, if I get pregnant, then I'm definitely going after that man for child support. And I said, well, actually, since female sex workers are getting paid more than male sex workers, wouldn't you be the one responsible to pay child support?
What'd she say?
Actually, well, it's unfortunate because I didn't think of that at the time. I thought of that after the fact. So that's the thing. Sometimes, follow-up questions will come a little bit late. Like, I said, oh, I should have said this or should have said that. But I did kind of, I don't know. It's just, I think that even when I'm doing like street interviews, sometimes it's like so noisy. I mean, just like this is one of the noisiest cities. I mean, I'm out on the Strip, on, a Friday or Saturday night, and you've got motorcycles and helicopters. And sometimes people are like right in front of your face and I can't hear what they're saying. And so there's times where I want to follow up, or sometimes I think of, a good follow-up that I could say later. And so, it's just, I'm an evolving creator just like you are and stuff. I'm learning new things, as I grow. If you look at my earliest stuff, I'm thinking, oh, I could have said this. And, so we're all learning.
So, okay. So you'd like to see women approach men. Like what other masculine duties would you say? Would you like men to be like
the idea that men are expected to be the sole providers, or that, or just this notion that, that men have to have all this money. I mean, who's advocating for the average man? Do we want to live in a society where only the top 10, 20% of men get all the women, and then the bottom 80% of men are all just celibate? Mm-hmm. And then what's going to be the incentive for them to want to do anything?
Right.
And then we're sitting here and we're saying, oh, well, men are weak because they want to stay home and play video games. And it's like, well, what should they do? Go out and be in the social scene and get, abused and get ripped off? So I think that what's happening is I almost believe that the male loneliness epidemic might be by design, because I think that, the whole idea that sex sells. And I think kind of like everyone's exploiting men now. Everyone's exploiting that problem. I think that there are feminists exploiting those lonely men to try to sell them OnlyFans. And there are tradcons exploiting those lonely men to try to sell them marriage, which is an unfair deal. And there are dating coaches trying to exploit those lonely men to sell them courses and self-improvement. So
I guess how would that... I'm just trying to think of a world, like, do you think that's even possible where men, like, women are really going to approach men? Well, and like, I'm not saying it wouldn't be nice. I'm just wondering if you think, or that like, go ahead.
I think what happens is necessity is the mother of invention. People do what they have to do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think that the reason a lot of men simp is because they kind of have to.
Yeah.
Because men, you ever hear the expression "all men pay"?
Yeah.
It's like even if you're not paying with your money, you pay with your money, energy, attention, and time. Men have to earn it. So it's kind of like men just have to play the game, and women are the ones who make the rules. And so what ends up happening is I think that it just comes down to a question of who has the leverage. Right now, women control access to sex. Sex is the ultimate power. And women know this, and women abuse this. And so men are basically stuck, men have a higher biological need for sex than women. I think men actually, like, sex is a need for most men. And so I think that in order to kind of like level the playing field, I'm not necessarily saying like, women have to approach men, but in other words, I believe that women are coming from an abundance mindset. Men are coming from a scarcity mindset. Of course, unless you're like that top, 10% man who has women approaching you. And the whole idea of women approaching is kind of not that far-fetched, because a lot of these dating coaches want to sculpt men to become that super high-value man that women chase. Mm-hmm. So women will chase the minority of men, but men are chasing the majority of women. So I think what has to happen is there has to be some kind of shift in leverage. And I think a big thing that would help that is men being given more access to more sexual access. In other words, I think what's happening right now is everyone's telling men step up and pay a higher price to the point where they're overpaying. I think what we need to focus on is I think we need to figure out ways to lower the price. I've done several episodes on, I think that legalization of prostitution. I know it's a very controversial topic. Not a lot of people talk about it, but I think if prostitution was safe and regulated prostitution, I'm not talking about streetwalkers. I'm talking about if we had brothels and men could go get sex anytime they wanted, I think that women would have to be forced to bring more to the table because sex wouldn't be enough.
Do you see that in Vegas? Because isn't it semi-legal here?
Not necessarily. It's legal in Pahrump, I believe, or in Nye County. It's I think it's like a 2-hour drive away, but it's not convenient. It's not affordable. Most people can't afford, a $300 to $500, you know what I mean? But what we have right now is almost worse than prostitution because I think men are paying for the opportunity to maybe get it, but they're not actually getting it. And so I think, I've even asked the question, if men could get sex anytime they want, almost like go to a massage parlor or almost like we have dispensaries for, I think that if that was available to men, I think they wouldn't feel the need to overpay. They would be more selective because they would, and I think there would be no reason to be with a woman other than love.
And I could actually see that potentially happening. Could you?
Well, I mean,
prostitution getting legalized.
Why not in Vegas? I mean, it makes the most sense here to start with. But I don't know. I mean, it might be an unfortunate reality that we're headed towards, but I know that tradcons definitely wouldn't like that because it promotes degeneracy, according to their.
Yeah, but if they cared about degeneracy, they would promote young marriage, and they don't.
Well,
yeah, like because like sex is a need, and people are gonna have sex with somebody. So if you're not promoting people to get married at, like, when does the sex drive start? Like, I don't even want to say it because we're not, like, it's kind of uncomfortable and we're on YouTube, but it's like it's pretty young. So like if we're having sex, like urges from the time you're 14, 15, 16 years old, like, even at 22, most people aren't going to be virgins if they have the choice.
Yeah.
So I'm like, unless you're promoting a young marriage, what are people going to do about their sex drives? I was just on a Christian show like 5 days ago, and it just premiered today actually, and I was arguing with the guys and saying that sex was a need for men, and that if Christians like cared about degeneracy, they would push young marriage, like 18.
Someone told me also that I think could that possibly even keep marriages together? I mean, someone said something about like I think it was in Japan where married men will go off and go see concubines or whatever it is, kind of on the side, and the wives just don't want to hear about it. But I'm not sure. I mean, it's should men be stuck in a dead bedroom marriage? You know what I mean? Because I mean, obviously, when we talk about marriages, a lot of times men are hostages within their own marriage.
Yeah,
and women are paid to leave, and men. It's cheaper to keep her.
I'm not saying that guys, especially in this climate, should get married at 18. But I'm saying if the conservatives cared about degeneracy, they'd push it, right? Because then that problem's solved.
Yeah. I kind of had this question about that. I said, why is it that anything feminists don't like, they label misogyny, and anything that tradcons don't like, they label degeneracy?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. That's a good question.
So it's just two competing ideologies.